control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this great planet we call Earth. We are live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the snowy Great White North on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you're on the East Coast. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on SpaceOutRadio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio. We do this thing every night of the week as we rock in and out of every show, thanks to our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. You can follow me on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. If you want to take part in this show, what you have to do now is you have to actually sign into one of the chat rooms on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, and on Facebook with the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up on our website for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, guess what? It's time. It's $5 a month on average. And with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While at our website, you can read up on my latest blog. It is my Spaced Out Radio Christmas list. Help me out with that one if you can. And check out Eric Markham's SOR Space Wire for your latest in weird news. Also, if you've had an experience you can't explain and you want someone to talk about it, head to our website, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to find out what's going on. All personal information is 100% confidential. We want to thank these two groups, especially the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for allowing us into your home, your car, on your computer, wherever you are listening. And if you are a listener on Revolution Radio, we love having you around as well. It is the largest nonprofit online station going today. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. And with the final month of the year now underway, it's the first Friday of December, which means we get to bring back Mr. R. Keith Andrews, our resident ET expert, for his monthly feature we call the ET Experience. I know at KJ's house down in Florida, they're all going, woo, woo, Keith is back! Anyways, Keith has developed quite a cult-like following here, with his vast knowledge of what he likes to call the off-worlders through his own personal experiences. It's one thing to have a visitation or a sighting, but to have a lifetime of contact, both good and malevolent, is a different beast altogether. Over the last 12 months, we've been able to chat endlessly with Keith about what it's like having contact. Keith has taught us, like it or not, that not every human is a good egg. ETs are pretty much the same way. But tonight, we might be getting a little controversial. One of the most controversial topics that we've had with Keith to discuss on this show, we're going to do it next. We may push some buttons, and in my opinion, that's okay. Learning can always be about stuffed animals and potato chips. You get the analogy. Tonight we are going to discuss the implications and benefits of global unity as it pertains to the advancements that the off-worlders have made in comparison to the stumbling blocks that humans are currently experiencing. Where this goes, we have no idea, because usually you, the audience, are so into this show and you participate so well that sometimes we take it off on a different tangent and we lose all control, but that's what it's all about. Remember, if you are in one of the chat rooms that is following this show, please type your questions in capital letters. That way, either myself or Keith can get to your questions as soon as we can fit them in. We bring in our Keith Andrews here to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Keith, how are you, my friend?
Upright. That's about as far as I want to push it for the moment, but hey, what the heck?
Well, you know what? It beats the other alternatives at times.
You know, having been there and done that, that's a whole different topic. You know?
Yes, I do know. I do know all too well about your stories. I haven't gone through that just yet, but, you know, one day I know I will. That's one thing I'm guaranteeing myself.
Yeah, the going there is something everybody gets to go through, whether they want to or not. The getting back is where it gets tricky.
Oh, yes. Yes. We've never really discussed that with you. You know, see, this is where we get off the rails right off the bat, because you go and say something that's intriguing, and then all of a sudden, boom, there we go. We're on our way. So if you get us off track this early in the show, you know, after the show, I'm going to shake my finger at you and just basically say, this is your fault.
Yeah, but the way I look at it from that standpoint, if I can derail myself, just imagine what I can do to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. That indeed. Can you believe, Keith, that this is already our final show of 2016 together?
Yeah, it's the year just vanished. I mean, I swear we were talking about it being the first one just yesterday.
I know,
Yeah.
And it's weird because I looked at it today and I'm like, holy cow, like, where did this go? The months just have burned on by. And I don't know if time is getting faster or as we get older we have less things to achieve, so that way time just kind of runs into one. But to be on the final show of 2016 with you, it's a little emotional, my friend, honestly. I can't believe it's happened that quickly.
Well, that's just it, and there's so much to the sad part is, and I understand where your challenges come from with the time side of things, but there is so much that has to get sorted out, and now with the way that things are apparently accelerating, I know from my standpoint, time doesn't so much accelerate as I get less sleep. Which is really a bad thing in some ways. But, you know, there's so many times this year, just looking back, that we've ended up going from a three-hour format and having to shove it into the 3.5 to 4 hours just because of the number of incredible questions that the listeners have been dropping in our lap.
Mm-hmm. And they love it when you come on. And I know down in Florida right now, KJ, as I mentioned in my interview, usually the first Friday of the month, she has a little get-together party on her patio with the speakers going. So I'm pretty sure that all of her friends right now are hanging out in front of the speakers, probably alligators going by swimming by in the streams and the jetties and everything like that, but they've got you cranked up, my friend. They've got you cranked up, so I want you to say a special hello to KJ, because this is the one episode that she looks forward to every month on this show.
Well, with that in mind, thank you so much, KJ, and I noticed you've said in SOR here on Facebook that you're trying to get on the patio, and, you know, the neat part there is, If you get the speakers on, or more to the point, when you do, then the neighbors can listen as well. And then you'll be the star of that area, of that neighborhood, depending on the size of your speakers. So, welcome back.
My friend, when you look past, in the last 12 months, or 11 months leading up to tonight, in 2016 rather, why don't I just say that rather than making it complicated? In 2016, what have been some of the highlights that we have talked about just overall in this show?
Oh, man. We've gotten into some really good ones. I think, honestly, it wasn't so much a topic as an event, and I think it must have been 4 or 5 months back when the show was going great. We weren't having any problems, and then I think just about everybody in the listening audience was going, can we go an extra hour? Right? But I think if I were to pick one, and I really can't tell you the month, yes, I can. It'd be in September when we were doing the live show right from the Experience or Speak conference, when we got interrupted by the resident guests out there.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool when that happened. Not going to lie. That was a lot of fun. And, the fact that you took the time to do that, because I actually had said to you, do you want a week off or a month off just so we can kind of get, back on regular time as what we normally do? And you were like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it just well. And you know what? It ended up being a lot of fun that night. And, that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes, is we just let it fly by the seat of the pants. And, the experiences and the questions, usually for people who are new to this show, I do want to say, and there's a lot of new people, Keith. We hooked up with United Public Radio Network about a month ago now. And
nice.
We've literally seen an increase. And talking to Joe Montaldo, who runs the station, he'd been looking for a nighttime show, and we've literally seen an increase of over 20,000 people a night listening in. They may not all be in chat, but literally his network goes to 160 countries around the world, and for us to all of a sudden get on there and be a part of that, it is really cool. So we thank Joe for helping us bring up our numbers big time on this show. But the whole point is, we have a plethora of new listeners who have now tuned in and are learning about you. Why don't you take a couple of minutes here just to explain a little bit of yourself, because literally we have thousands of new listeners.
Well, I mean, it's in a way, and this one's a hard one for me, really, because overwhelm is really not something I'm used to at all. I grew up a recluse, primarily because with what I've seen, in a nutshell, I started off with the normal routine that most people do as far as the negative side of off-world interaction. And let's just be clear to start with, for the new listeners, and certainly welcome to all of you. I split the UFO phenomenon into off-worlders and ancient races. And in a nutshell, the difference is this. The off-worlders came here from other planets. Ancient races evolved on this planet, and then some of them departed and come back. The other thing that has to be clear, I keep hearing people talking about talking about an entity being from a different dimension. And, well, from what I've seen, simply put, everything that you can see in this world, and this may just be an issue of vocabulary or of the words that we're using, but everything that can be seen in this world that can be interacted with is third dimensional. It is not of the fourth, fifth, eighth dimension. It is third. But they do live or do move at a higher vibratory rate, which is why they appear to phase in and out of existence. Now, the other big thing that I've come across, the day I was born, I had my first run-in, my first encounter with off-worlders, and for that matter, with non-corporeals, what you would call ghosts. Because the day I was born, I died. Makes for a whole different way of looking at life. So, well, you know, people talk about living on borrowed time. And, you know, from my standpoint, when you start off dead, everything from there on is kind of moving forward. I'm just going to sidetrack myself right off the bat because Keith Allen on Spreaker here is asking, how do we know the ancient races were not originally off-worlders? Well, in a nutshell, in a way, you're right. Because it was spirits that actually orchestrated building the planet in the first place 5 billion years ago. If I remember correctly, it's about 5.5. They then built the bodies that became the first of the ancient races. And, well, let's put it this way. From there, they evolved. So, technically, yes, the first ancient races were off-worlders because they had to build the planet to start with. We're just going to bypass the whole thing. What killed me in the first place, Mario, was literally as near as I can figure, best way to put it, I didn't like the way I was treated on the day I was born, and I'll just let you imagine the way a newborn child feels when they're pulled out of the physical world. And so being born mottled green and black, I ended up in an incubator, and I wasn't overly impressed, so I left. And what I mean by that is I got out of my physical body, in spite of the fact that they had all the sense up to me, and I vacated, and my body up and died. So the nice people there decided to electrocute me, or at least that's how I took it, to bring me back. Now, the question of, am I 100% human? You know, scientifically, I can't prove it. Memory-wise, I'll leave that to your imagination. The reason I put it that way is because it's been a debate since the day I was born. One of the biggest questions people asked was how I got into the family I grew up in. And considering the fact that I was at the end, like the early part of my life was spent in the MyLab environment. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's military laboratories, the super soldier programs, the trying to organize or trying to create psychic warriors, the concept of trying to build people or enhance abilities either through training or through, quite frankly, genetic enhancement. And anybody that has seen anything in the way of the MyLabs, anybody that's got the memories of the MyLabs, well, let's put it this way. They're understated. I wish in a lot of ways that I didn't remember a great deal of the things I do, but I can still recall that side of it. To the point of watching 197 of my friends get terminated. And that's a whole mess in itself. The other aspect of all of this, as I'm sure some of you, because I keep getting told by people that I prefer off-worlders or aliens to humans. The reality is that's actually about as bogus as it gets. However, there are certain things I've noticed with all races, and you take somebody as open-minded as Scott. My apologies. How about if I beat on myself later there, Dave? You take somebody as open-minded as Dave is, and it's hard to find people in any race that are that open, that are that willing to open doors. When I first started dealing with off-worlders, now that I've pieced it together, the first group I ran into was a group of ant-like creatures. And rest assured, they're anything but nice. You know, I've had ongoing complications with them on a regular basis. You know, years apart, in all fairness. But in no case has it been a real enjoyable run. So with that in mind, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of struggle around that side of it. When I was 5 years old, I was actually terminated, quite frankly, by the military. And yes, I do mean that quite literally. It didn't work out quite the way they were planning. I walked out of the morgue. You know, needless to say, this is what's called the Reader's Digest version. To date, I deal regularly with in excess of 40, that's 40 different races. And yes, I do have enough background on many of them to have cultural outlooks, to have military perspectives, to understand, and this is where it got a little screwy for me, to understand their motivations for being here. So, you know, just a quick side here. AK Cog has asked if I've ever crossed paths with John Teeter. And, you know, the reality is I may have, but I have no idea because I don't tend to ask people's names when I'm talking to them. So unless he introduced himself, the odds of my knowing it was him, not good. You know, the other issue, of course, and we knew this was going to happen, Dave. This issue that Mario in Spreaker has brought up about the object at a Trump rally in North Carolina. In all fairness, I never saw it, but then I haven't had cable in I think a year and a half now, and I certainly haven't watched the politics. I've seen too many things that go the wrong direction when you turn it over to the politicians because they keep forgetting what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. You know, this whole idea of fighting with each other and fighting, and for the general populace, fighting against world unity, trying to say one group of people, one religion, one color of people is lesser than the others, is exactly what's holding things up. As a matter of fact, I heard something, I saw something on Facebook today that just absolutely floored me. You know how, and this is a repetitive sidetrack, but you know how how people keep debating whether gays and lesbians are born that way or whether it's a choice or what have you? Well, we're going to skip that side of it for a minute and go to a completely stupid one. Some genius came up with the idea that people are not born black. You know, now, I'm not sure, but I think there's something missing in the translations that are getting out there at this point. So, you know, yes, I do deal with pretty much any topic I've ended up dealing with, because the biggest race, well, not the biggest, the most common race I deal with are something that I've always known as Rosasians, which are the 7.5 to 8.5 foot reptilians. And yes, they've been here for, quite frankly, generations, but primarily they've, you know, the last almost 100 years, they've been pretty consistent. And yes, they are working with the governments of the world, depending on which government. You know, there was a neat little issue that was brought up years ago about the idea that Hitler was, you know, that Germany had contact with the offworlders. Well, he did. What most people don't want the rest of you to know is so did virtually every other major government in the world at the same time. It's just everybody wants to pick on the Germans. can't imagine why in that particular issue, but there's so much that was missed. Now, Joe, and Joe, pardon me if I mispronounce this, but Joe, I believe it's Algier.
Joe Algier.
Algier, thank you. He's asking in SOR if the aliens prefer cold or hot weather. Well, that depends entirely on the race. Some of them depend on hot weather, some of them depend on cold weather, and some of them could care less. I'm just not entirely certain how. It's quite a varied. Bear in mind, like I said, I'm dealing with over 40 races. Okay. When you start dealing with elementals, like a fire elemental, and thankfully they don't show up on Earth very often, but fire elementals obviously are not going to be happy in cold weather. And they're certainly not going to be happy in wet weather. The one big difference between most of the off-worlders and the human race is that off-worlders, regardless of their color, regardless of any other belief, are unified. In other words, they work as a race towards the same idea. Now, there are discrepancies, yes, but we're not talking about, I think it's something like, at last I knew, about 147 different races, different nations, rather. On the whole, other races, the ones that have made it to interstellar travel, happen to do so because they don't work at killing each other off. And, mankind is the only race I've run into that deliberately, by neglect, there's others that have damaged their own planet. But mankind, humans, are the only ones that deliberately still go out of their way to destroy the planet that they have to live on. To me, that is just the most bizarre issue. Okay, one of the biggest things that I keep talking to people about when people talk about all this, the elite do this and the elite do that. I'm just going to put this in simple terms. But if you take any city anywhere around the world, and let's say a city of 100,000 people, there's only 300 to 500 people running the political side of that city, between City Hall and whatever other governmental outlook they've got. Now, people say that the government has control. Well, certainly they do. Because the sad reality of it is, the other 99,000 people aren't doing anything about it. They sit there, they complain to each other, they separate each other, and it is done very well through the media. Okay, that's an incredible situation. And you guys fight with each other and totally ignore what the politicians are up to. Now, people complain about the pharmaceutical companies and the fact that they're creating all these poisons. Well, in all fairness, the pharmaceutical companies, they're turning around and they tell you, here's this little thing that this product will do to help you, but here's 800 others that it'll do to kill you. Please buy it. Now, if you're silly enough to buy it, who's to blame? You take a look at some of the other races. When it comes to health, now, that sounds like I'm saying humans are retarded. Well, in some ways. But the reality is this. There are many races where if a child is born asthmatic or with a cleft lip, or maybe their legs don't work quite perfectly, where they are killed because they are a lesser gene. They're a recessive gene. They're not good for the race. So they're terminated. Now, thankfully, Humans, on the whole, don't do that. There are still some that are absolutely backwoods and do things like that. I can think of all kinds of examples. But on the whole, the humans don't. Okay. Now, one of the things that you have to remember is when we talk about a unified world, we are not talking about one person sitting at the top of the world saying, this is how you have to behave, and if you don't behave and don't do exactly what we tell you, we're going to make your life miserable. That is not unity. That is negative dictatorship. Okay, yes, there does have to be something in the way of guidelines. The political system, the whole outlay has to be there. One of the, when we take a look at the Galactic Consortium, which is the governing body that floats around in this sector, well, quite frankly, they float around in a lot more sectors, but the Galactic Consortium has a Council of 12, and they are more than 12 races, but each race that is a member of the consortium at best can only have one representative from their race. Now, for the races that are on multiple planets, they still only have the option of having one member of their race on that council, so there will never be a lopsided council. In answer to the question that goes hand in hand with that, Eric Markham in Spreaker is asking, do the off-worlders use our marijuana for medicinal or recreational purposes? And the answer to that is, and better herbs as well. Now, the other nice little part about it, about this whole thing about the governmental system, it's great to have everybody have a say of their own. Except when you get 100,000 people in one place, they're not all going to agree. As a matter of fact, it's very seldom they'll agree. So what has to happen is people have to have guidelines. Now, there's a very simple guideline that is laid out in virtually every religious text, every religious teaching, every spiritual guideline on this planet, and frankly, off this planet as well. There's only 4 laws that are actually imperative to follow. One, and these are the only 4 I pay attention to, but you'll understand why in about 10 seconds. The first one is societal law. And what societal law means is that you must obey the laws of the land in which you are. Now, in other words, if you're in a community, if you own a house in a community, and the community says you're allowed to smoke, in your house, you are absolutely permitted to say, no, people in my house are not permitted to smoke. You can smoke outside, but you can't smoke in my house. Conversely, if you're in a community where the community says you're not allowed to smoke, you being the homeowner in that community cannot turn around and tell people, yes, in my house, you can. Okay, this is where societal law, and the catch with societal law is it applies to everybody and every race, regardless of their social standing, their age, their gender. It doesn't matter. Now, the difficult part with it is that most people make this brilliant idea that if it's the mayor of the city or the president of the country, that person has final say. Well, let me put it this way. And I might have dates a little off kilter, but my understanding is that in World War II, and I think World War I as well, at Christmas, there was no ceasefire. No government stepped up, no military colonel or general stepped in and said, don't shoot anybody. But everybody on the front line pretty much put down their weapons, crossed the dead field, and had Christmas together. Now, this was not dictated by anybody, so there's something else going on where Christmas is concerned, where the holiday, where that particular time comes into play. Now, what I've never been able to figure out is why they got up and started shooting again. Now, okay, Joe asks a really, really unintelligent question. He goes, wait, aliens have to obey the local laws, then how come they kidnap people? Well, Joe, we've covered this one with other groups before, but in a nutshell, mankind goes over to Africa, kidnaps elephants, kidnaps tigers, kidnaps monkeys, tags them, does blood tests on them, does fluid containment on them, experiments on them, and puts them back. These guys are doing exactly the same thing. Many of the off-world...
But Keith, let me introduce, and I'm going to get you to turn your speaker down there for a little bit here, so we don't get any feedback. But I'm gonna interject here on what Joe's question is. Whether or not we want to believe it or not, or whether it's ego or not, the fact is that mankind is, for all intents and purposes, number one on this planet. Okay, and we are knowledge questers and everything like that. His question, the way I see it, doesn't pertain to them or to the animals as much as it's saying, we are having to obey local laws, yet if they have to obey the laws, then why are they taking us without our consent? And I understand the easy way to put it is through the example of what we do to other animals. I totally get that. I can respect that. But on a human level, we don't see elephants or rhinoceroses or fish solving scientific cures for mankind. We don't see horses building construction buildings or clothing or anything like that. So
I
there is a little bit of a
I understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. So help us out here.
There is one of the big things. Remember, okay. I agree. The issue of people being kidnapped, been there, done that. Not fun. Certainly don't condone it. But the majority of the reason for it is because when you take a look at what they're doing or doing it to, yes, they're supposed to follow said laws. Sad to say, not everybody does. People have this misconception that off-worlders are more advanced than humans. The reality is they've been around longer and they've got better toys, but they certainly haven't figured things out on a spiritual level for the most part. Now, the reason is on the whole that they tend to kidnap people is twofold. One is, three really, but the major reason they tend to do it is because, quite frankly, they don't speak human, and trying to explain to many of them don't speak English or a Terran language, but much more importantly, trying to explain to a human why they're doing what they're doing is very much akin to somebody that has graduated with honors from a with a PhD in mathematics, trying to explain to a kindergartner how light actually travels. Now, I'm not trying to skirt the question, but the problem is the reasons they don't follow all of the laws is partially because they really don't get where the problem is. They're trying to reach out and help. Many of these races have actually turned over some of these cures people have talked about. Okay. Some of the health cures that people have been working on, have been asking for, i.e., the cure for cancer, the cure for Alzheimer's, and they turned them over to the people that should have passed them on, such as the governments, but the governments chose not to turn them over. So, one of the biggest things that they do pick people up for, and they're doing the testing for, is the hybridization program, which is not actually as negative as people are tending to believe it. What it is they're trying to grow cultural interpreters. A computer can translate language from one language to another, given enough information. But it will never understand the cultural implications, and that's stored in genetic coding. So when you start looking at that side of it, when you start looking at the issue of them as it really is legitimately put, kidnapping. Most of the time it's done kidnapping is kidnapping. Any way you do it, it's not a pleasant experience for the kidnapped individual. But if you think about the other side of it, and this is where it gets a little screwy, if they were to land on the front lawn and try and make direct contact, most people panic. And unfortunately, humans clearly have a tendency of panicking for at very quick rate, but then humans are a very young race, especially galactically speaking. Now, some races, you take a look at some of the humans, okay, and a human with a especially physical facial deformity, okay, something that is out of the norm. This does not mean the person can be mentally perfectly normal, as it were. But the second they have something that is physically apparent, it makes people edgy on the whole. And for pity's sakes, for the listeners, both the longtime listeners and the newcomers, for pity's sakes, please understand that we are not talking about, about this being the right way. It's just simply the only way they've figured out to do it. Okay. Now, the issue of panic and what have you, yes, people will panic. Many of the races are actually trying to get humans to open their eyes. Okay. One of the biggest things, and understand, we've got 3 wars going on in the sector. And that's ignoring what's happening on this planet. Okay. And, sadly, that doesn't mean, this indicates, it clearly shows you they haven't figured out the socialization process. Now, Gail on SOR asks, if they don't speak human, thus English, or any other race for that matter, or any other language for that matter, how do they communicate with so many experiencers and abductees? Well, many times it is telepathic. They do have on board translators that have been born there, that have studied on Earth. There are off-worlders that are on Earth that act as translators. Okay, so quite often there are extra people involved. But this doesn't mean that they're able to explain it or communicate past the panic level. Okay, I'm just trying to make it, because we're talking about such a complicated problem, and it's complicated not because of the issue, but because of the number of different experiences people go through. One thing to keep in mind is that, and I was actually thinking of pointing this out, If I say anything that offends somebody, number one, understand Dave doesn't actually control what comes out of my mouth. Heck, I don't. But if it doesn't apply directly to you, for pity's sakes, don't take personal affront to it. If I find somebody in the room, in the 2 chat rooms that I'm looking at, that says something that annoys me, rest assured, I'm pretty black and white about it. You'll know I'm not impressed with that individual. On the whole, I've got nothing against anybody. Okay, I do find it very disturbing when I take a look at the number of people that are touting and talking about how farther advanced they are, how much more correct they are, and we need to eliminate the school system because it's not working, or we need to eliminate the elite. Well, let's face it. Yeah, technically you could, but the only way you can wipe out the human education system is to wipe out the human race. So this may not be a good idea. Where it comes to the political side of it, and I do want to get far more into this, but when it comes to the overall political side, you can't go wiping out political setup. The requirement for an intergalactic society is that somebody's got to be able to make decisions. And it's not going to agree with everybody. However, understand that all laws have to apply to everybody. Now, one of the biggest things that you've got to understand is this issue about the religious side of it, or the spiritual side. And I've been asked many times if the off-worlders believe in God, if it's many gods, if it's one God. Well, again, we're back to the same issue of multiple races, multiple belief structures, but virtually all of them believe in some sort of a higher power. Okay, and when you look at the different religious tomes around the planet, around Earth, you will find that they all essentially say the same thing. Be nice to each other. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Okay, they tell you what you put your effort into, what you put your concentration on, is what's going to come out. Okay, that's what you're going to build towards. It does not mean, by the way, if you're always treating people decently, it is one of the biggest issues is that there are other people that have their own desires, and this is where societal law and the political system comes into play. Okay, now, Mario in Spreaker has asked that about this other issue. He says, besides the Council of 12, there are also a Council of 5, Galactic Federation of Light, Sphere Alliance. The answer is yes, and there's a number of others as well. I was only going at the top of the local totem pole, as it were. The reality is there are all kinds of different governing bodies and different groups of off-worlders, both mixed and segregated, handling a whole lot of different venues. Trying to put them into one bin, trying to put everything that's going on in one umbrella would be virtually impossible. Something to keep in mind, and I guess this is probably the best time to open that door, but when you take a look at all the problems on the planet, I've been asked multiple times, why don't the off-world, if they're so advanced, why don't they clean up the Earth? Well, for those of you that have kids, you'll probably understand this better than the ones that don't. And that is, if you've got a child, or if you've got a tenant or a roommate, and you go in and clean up after them, they will make a mess again. They won't take the message and clean it up and keep it clean. If you turn around and get them to clean it up and show them how to clean it up, and you force them to clean it up, they're less likely to make a mess of it. Now, in the extreme case, when off-worlders clean up a problem with another race, many times that boils down to wiping it out. This not be in your best interest to have them do that. Number two, take a look at the planet around you. Okay, are you one of the people that has dropped even one piece of litter on the ground and left it there? Okay, it doesn't take a genius to figure out you need to pick it up. Yet people consistently throw it on the ground and then complain about the litter that somebody else has dropped. This is an issue of taking responsibility for your own actions. And this is where the off-worlders with a unified community differ in many cases, because they don't just leave it to somebody else to clean up, or they don't leave it to somebody to, to straighten things out. Okay, they find out how, somebody says this has to be done, and away they go. Sadly, people right now are being taught to ignore a lot of what's going on. Okay, now, I'm just looking at this. Claudia in SOR has said, she writes, seems mankind's spiritual consciousness rises to high peaks like in the Atlantis or Lemurian and possibly Egyptian times, but throughout times, something makes the consciousness fall after reaching a high spiritual awakening time after time. What do you think the cause is? Well, the cause is this. People get up to that point. They get to this spiritual awakening. And then somewhere along the lines, people do one of two things. They either get complacent, figuring it's working out, or somebody else wants it for themselves and tries to take it. Now, the Lemurians are the one difference that I've run across in human evolution. The Lemurian race came to a grinding halt because of a wayward curiosity thought that wiped out the race. It wasn't an act of war. It wasn't an act of negligence. Looking back on it, it was a bit short-sighted. Over 10 billion people on a planet was wiped out virtually overnight because of a thought process that ricocheted around the world. In the time of Atlantis, it was because Atlanteans had technology that the Earth that Terrans wanted, and they didn't want to learn how to use it. They just wanted it. Okay, much like the newest bubble. They didn't understand it, and they tried taking it by force, and that backfired in a very big way for Atlantis in this case. I mean, it wiped out the locals, but the real damage was done to Atlantis itself. Okay. Now, the reality behind that is that you're looking at a lot of periods, like, for instance, natural disaster can absolutely devastate a society that's working well. Okay. One of the problems that happened when you take a look at Egypt was frankly a case of breaking karmic law number 2. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. You have too many slaves, too many people being treated poorly as second-class citizens, and they will revolt. The Roman Empire suffered the same thing. Greed and stupidity wiped them out. Okay. So, from that standpoint, there's a lot of wipe a real positive, prosperous society out. And go ahead, Dave.
Keith, I just want to remind you, we got about 90 seconds left.
Okay. Gee, 3 hours is over already? That's
in the first hour.
So when we come back, we certainly want to get into where world unity can actually help put all of this together and explain to you why some races have evolved further, even though there is conflict going on. The higher technologies and medical systems are coming together. Okay, and again, when we're talking about it, if you've got questions, for pity's sakes, ask. It's really appreciated if you write your questions in capital, because in case you hadn't noticed, I'm trying to follow them, but they're not exactly that easy to follow when they're not written in a way I can see them. And Dave is doing a phenomenal job watching in the background as well.
I just want to remind our audience that you do have sight problems. So, give Keith a break. Just put everything in capital letters when you are typing out a question, so that way he has an easier time to see it. And that way Keith or myself don't accidentally skip over your question, because that's the last thing we want to do, man, is we want to make sure that we get it all in here for you. Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on, because, I don't know, I just feel like talking this half hour.
Okay.
It's my show and everything. I know I'm teasing. I am. Our Keith Andrews is with us the first Friday of every month. His next appearance will be on Friday, January 6th. We got 2 hours to go with our resident ET expert right here on the Mighty SOR. We'll be back right after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you'd like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific Northwest has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness. You can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back for the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Don't forget to tune in this weekend, where Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglett are back for Spaced Out Weekend, Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. And they're going to put on a couple of good shows before I am back on Monday. Peter Haviland will join us. We're going to talk ghosts in Texas, because, you know, everything's more haunted in Texas. That'll be on Monday night. If you're listening in on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 160 countries around the world, good to have you along for the ride. Thank you so much for being with us. And if you've tuned in to Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can hang out, check out some of the cool features we have, like the Bumblefoot tab, if you like our music. The SOR Spacewire by Eric Markham. Read up on that. Read up on my latest blog. Fill out an SOR Sightlines report if you've had a weird sighting. And, of course, you can always join the SOR Space Travelers Club. We give away swag every month. If you like winning, like Ron Moniak did last month. And so much more. Tonight we are talking with R. Keith Andrews. He comes on the first Friday of every month. It's his final visit to this show, all the way from Kelowna, British Columbia, to you around the world, and apparently KJ's R. Keith Andrews party in Florida. So, hello, KJ and friends who are partying along, drinking wine and having fun with the alligators. Keith, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much for having me back. The way you tied that off, it almost sounded like I'm not coming back. Well, I won't be back this year, I don't think.
No, your next visit will be next year, January 6th.
Which is always a good day. Comes right in between the 5th and the 7th, I think.
It usually does. Sometimes it skips. Okay, let's get things going here. I got another question here from, let me see, Uncle Joe Allgaier, who is asking, aliens break our laws and theirs. Intergalactic criminals, I say, and they have been around long enough to learn our language. So the question that he has is, if he gets taken by aliens, can he just quote the first intergalactic law and they will take him home?
Well, I guess technically he could, for all the good that would do. You could certainly quote the first intergalactic law. You must obey the law of the land in which you are. The unfortunate part is you're in their backyard, meaning you have to obey their laws more than they have to obey yours, which creates a problem in itself. If you want to go with the first karmic law, and the three karmic laws actually go hand in hand, but the first one that people usually list is be true to yourself, which they're also doing. Is the approach you're using, although I understand the reason for the question, they will take it literally, and they will literally look at you and go, well, we're following galactic law. You're in our territory, therefore, because you're the small fish, it's our laws you have to listen to, not the other way around. And by the way, that doesn't make it right, that just makes it real. And, do understand, I've mentioned so many times, I don't agree with a lot of what is being done to the human race, or to other races for that matter. Okay, this is one of the biggest things I've been dealing with the different races, is doing my dangest to help them understand that just because a law is there, or just because the ability to do something is there, doesn't make it right to do it. Okay. The unfortunate, Eric says they sound like, and I'm just not going to fill that one in, but referring to aliens that use that kind of concept, understand that off-worlders, ancient races, and humans all are very similar in their mental configuration. They've got better toys, but you have, as Dave pointed out earlier, you still have good ones and bad ones. If you get a good one and you say, I don't want to be here, 90% of the time, they'll drop you off. They'll put you back. They will undoubtedly wipe the memory, or overlay the memory is more often the case, because most humans really can't cope well with being taken in the first place. I've heard of countless cases where an attempted collection was made, and all the person did was say, I don't want to go, and they walked away and left them there. They didn't take them. So it does work. But the reality of it is that you're dealing with a situation that is, Joe, you can get offensive to an awful lot of people really fast. And like I said, I'm pretty subtle where it comes to somebody that, kind of annoys me. If you're going to put that kind of garbage on, don't bother. Because I can say the same thing about every race out there, that some of the ideas they've got, some of their actions are absolutely retarded. Okay? They're absolutely bass-ackwards. This idea that people should think that shooting somebody is going to help bring peace is retarded. The idea that a government can say, we're going to get a raise, and all of you people that are struggling to feed yourselves don't need money, is absolutely stupid. A race that says, gee, that person was born with an extra toe, let's kill them because they're a deformity, is absolutely backwoods. The reality of it is that there
Keith,
is.
Keith, I'm gonna play devil's advocate on Joe's side here for a second, okay? Because I understand where he is coming from, and we have to understand there are a lot of people, and I know you've gone through it yourself, who are absolutely petrified that these extraterrestrials are coming in there, snapping us up. As you said, you don't agree with that. Okay,
You're right.
And you've said it about 3 times already on this program. However, it doesn't answer the question, and I'm not sure if you fully know the answer, as to why, if there are rules of engagement that they are supposed to follow, yet they are breaking their own rules that are set out by this, I believe you called it a consortium of 12. Okay.
Yeah, Council of 12.
Or Council of 12, pardon me. Okay. The fact is, if they are coming in and manipulating those laws in some way, where's the punishment for those extraterrestrials from this so-called Council of 12 who's supposed to be taking care of us because we're the new kids on the block?
Okay.
I think that's what he's trying to get at. It has nothing to do with him trying to make it personal with you.
Oh, I didn't think he was making it personal with me, although I can see why you might think that. The problem here is this. The Council of 12 I was referring to deals with things that involve the interaction of the different races, of the overall picture. When we're talking about some of the things, like, for instance, who gets picked up, okay, the Council says, okay, the Council of 12 goes, there's this race that is evolving faster technologically than it is intellectually. Okay, they are growing so fast, and humans are not the only race this is happening to, by the way, which won't make you feel any better. The Council of 12 says, number one, you cannot wipe out this planet. Okay, period, flat out, that doesn't happen. Because the information that is contained within the triple helix, the data that is held on this specific planet, is essentially, if you will, irreplaceable. I mean, it could be replaced, but it would take centuries to do it. Well, it would take millennia. Okay. The biggest problem that we run into, the guidelines that the Council of 12 lay out are strictly on a massive level. For instance, let's take the president or the prime minister of any country. They don't tell the people how many, what groceries are to be stocked in a grocery store. What they do is they turn around and on the whole, they're supposed to say all the people have to be fed. Some genius along the line decides that food isn't a commodity that's supposed to be there, so it gets destroyed. The Council of 12 does not control that would be called micromanaging, and if they were trying to do that, you can bet this planet would already be non-existent. Okay, it's a question of, you've got so many people out there, they try and contain it. Okay, but unfortunately, when you're looking at trying to, for instance, with the hybridization program, that frankly the Greys are the ones that figured it out and have been spearheading the whole thing. The only way you can get the information and get the hybrids, the cultural hybrids, grown, birthed, is to collect races that don't understand it. Because even with most of the more advanced races, even they don't get the hybridization, the pitfalls and the complications. So even explaining it to them doesn't work. They can, people go, we want free energy. Well, that's great, and yes, free energy exists. But I wonder how many people realize that if you wipe out the current energy system, just completely obliterate it, how much is actually built into that? And this is where the complication comes in. It's not a lack of caring, it's a question of which is more important. Okay, and Don asked if you said where was it there? She asked, would they let you remember if you asked? And the answer is sometimes yes, but they actually they will listen to the question, but they will look at your mental fortitude from what they can see and decide whether that's a good idea. It's not a question of trying to conceal it. It's a question of trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for the people they are taking. And I know that sounds odd, but having been on both sides of the board, there are many times where people, like, for instance, let's just go with humans and war. There are many times that people wish they couldn't remember, or they thought it would be a good thing to remember and figured out afterwards they really wish they didn't remember the thing. Okay, the same sort of thing happens. As for the why, what happens to the ones that are really overlooking, when we're looking at the overall picture, there are galactic criminals. And the usual solution for an actual galactic criminal is not imprisonment. It is not a fine. Termination. There is no such thing on any other planet that I'm aware of as death row. Okay, death row doesn't exist on the whole. Okay, you do have appeals in court. And there are various different courts. There are appeals. And yes, some innocent people do end up dead, which is extremely unfortunate, but there is no such thing as a 20-year lineup. Okay, these are some of the ways that they correct problems. I mentioned that this is a question of, yes, there's a lot of heated energy around the whole abduction thing. Okay, but there's also the other side of it. And it's not a question of me going, oh, abduction is great. No, abduction is horrendous. When people talk to me about, oh, I just want to have an experience, I don't care what. I'm sitting there like, pray tell, were you drinking? Because some of these people, you don't want to have that interaction with. It's like with some of the people that follow religions and they go, well, I'm just going to let God sort it out. This isn't a wise idea. The intriguing part here is in Spreaker, Love Energy has said they consumers, we are creators. Well, the reality is everybody and every race is a consumer and a creator. Okay. The sad part about it, and I was looking through the questions that had come up earlier, and Eric had asked if the how do I put this? I'm just trying to make a look at my notes. Some of the things that people are looking at, like which government or which council is more valid than the next. Well, it depends on what the topic is or what the issue is. Because there are, as was indicated, there are more than just the Council of 12. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different councils. Some of them are one race. Some of them are a type of people, not necessarily one race. But it depends on the question that you're looking at. Okay. The biggest problem that you run into is that humans are looking at this justifiably as somebody came to their world and invaded and took things from them. Well, more to the point, kidnapped them. And yes, that is happening. There's no question there. The unfortunate part is that mankind, and this is not to say that what's happening to them is justified, but karmic law number 3 says energy out, energy in. And mankind is doing the same thing to the other planets that mankind is already on. Innocent in its own way. They're going to other planets, specifically the moon, Mars, Io, in our own galaxy right now, and doing exactly the same thing. They're setting down roots. They're exploring. They're digging up, digging holes. They're taking samples. They're putting the energy into exploration. Where it comes to most of the abductions, quite honestly, a lot of it is quite literally the same thing on a genetic level. What most people really don't want to hear is that many of the governments have actually orchestrated, many of the Terran governments have actually orchestrated it. Okay, where it's been a case of, okay, you give us some information and you can have X amount of genetic information. Now, as we know, governments, corporations don't exactly ask the people that they're so to speak protecting to take care of it. Okay, they don't ask, oh, is it okay if we sign you up for the relocation program? This is where it gets complicated. Now, one of the things that we've got to understand, okay, one of the biggest issues is that mankind has some incredible abilities, incredible strengths, not the least of which, like, I was trying to figure out what I'd actually written here. Eric had asked if the mantids are responsible for Terran medical advancement. And the answer to that is only some of it. Most of the medical advancement that has been done for the human race, most of it is done by humans. Take credit where credit is due. Most of it was done by the humans. The big problem that we run into is that man is not the most advanced race in the area. And much as a lot of what is going on is difficult, the reason that these other races have gotten off the planet, have evolved to the level they have, and rest assured, some of them have gone through worse histories than what man has, they just happen to be older. Okay, but they're not looking on the whole to kill each other. They're not looking at each other. The Greys, for instance, that I'm aware of, there are 15 different colors of rays, of Greys. Much like there are probably, 6 or 7 different colors on the whole of humans. But all Greys see Greys as Greys, not as a different race. And they work together. They work as a unit. So instead of sinking energy into trying to kill each other, they sink energy into how to get things to move forward. Okay. Now, Claudia has asked, what do some of the ships look like inside that you've been on? Well, I'll tell you, there's a few of them. I was in one that, you'd swear it, well, you really would. You'd look at it and you'd swear it was just a human ship. It had the normal, if you will, chair style, the normal buttons that you would expect, or switches and what have you. Most of it is done on a touch, on a holographic interface. It's actually, most of what was being operated was done by biomagnetic electrics, meaning, simply put, the energy of the person. And the safeguard in it is literally that. It's geared to whoever is supposed to be at the seat. It stops just anybody from jumping into the captain's seat and saying, I'm in charge. One of the more complicated ships that I was on, when you take a look at the Strazazian starship, frankly, humans on the whole cannot move the switches. They cannot physically turn the dials. And it's not because they look different, although the keypads are a little odd. Srizosians only have 3 fingers and a thumb. And besides that, they're tapped off in talons. But because Srizosians come from a higher density planet, they happen to have very heavy equipment. And humans are just not built to handle it, so they have to build human interfaces that can work with it. When we take a look at the octopeds, well, quite frankly, a little hard to explain, but think of it this way. They use 6 legs to operate 90% of their gear. Humans just are not capable of handling it at all. When you take a look at when you start looking at some of the obvious issue would be when you look at the giant races. Okay, trying to get up on chairs is a bit of a pain in the neck. And this is why there's a lot of times you won't be allowed in certain areas. Now, the complication that we have is it's sort of a question. We're talking in such wide generalities because there are so many different races, and that's where a lot of the problem comes in. So, how about if we pull this back just a fraction? The most common race that people deal with is the Greys. Those are the ones that are behind most of the abductions that take place. Okay. One of the... I'm just looking at some of this, but one of the biggest things that you got to remember with the Greys, there's actually 2 branches of them, if you will. 2 strains. For those of you that are old enough to have seen it already, and for those of you that aren't, I really recommend you go back and watch it. But Close Encounters of the Third Kind showed a beautiful picture of the appearance of the Greys of the 2 types. The short Greys are the scientists. They're the ones that are in charge of doing most of the abductions. They're the ones that are in charge of most of the medical examination. Okay. But the tall ones are the controllers. They are the ones that decide which people get picked up. They're the ones that decide whether or not they get the memory blocked or the memory left in. And again, it depends entirely on whether or not they feel that the human is capable of carrying on a normal life with that side of it. Okay, it's a very... The reason that people have to start working together, okay, what you have to realize is that people have to decide that war, that fighting, that segregation has never, at least not to the best of my knowledge, led to lasting peace. Every one of every major war certainly brings peace for a time, rebuild, regroup, that sort of thing. But the sad part of it is that the off-worlders, the reason they are as good as they are is this. And what I mean by good, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're better than people. Mankind has rules of war. Okay, there's this thing about not using excess power, or not shooting people at a certain time or during certain celebrations or certain times of the day or whatever. The off-worlders, when they go to war, they have one mandate: take out the opposition by any means necessary. Here is your goal. You don't worry about whether it's fair. Fair does not come into their vocabulary. Okay, people have got it in their head that you're supposed to be nice in war. Well, war is not nice. Okay, war is just absolutely the wrong road. And the one thing, and I've been telling people this for decades, the one thing you got to remember, guns aren't the problem. Knives are not the problem. The problem is that people keep using them to that which they can get by talking, by getting to know their neighbor. You want peace? Quit looking to wipe out the neighbor.
Keith, I want to get in a question here because we've skipped past this one about half an hour ago. KJ is asking, some other people say there is a war going on Mars right now with several off-worlders. Do you believe this?
On Mars, no, but around it, yes. And, it's a very... The thing is, Mars is occupied. Okay, it is not a barren planet. And if you watch from telescopes and that sort of thing, you can actually see the conflict going on around it. They're trying, what the fight is for, is trying to get a foothold because, tactically speaking, you can launch a better attack from Mars towards Earth easier than from any other planet. Okay, and the reason I say easier, people would go, well, the moon's easier. Well, yeah, but the moon is also awful close. And you don't want Terrans getting there that fast. And mankind does not have much, that much to deal with. Besides that, frankly, from Mars, you can blow the moon out and take the planet out if you decide to go that route. Now, yes, this does go completely against the Galactic Consortium. They do not agree with this, and that's what the war is about. Okay, now in answer to the question, well, if they've got so powerful, why is the war still continuing? Well, because the consortium itself is young compared to some races. And, well, let's face it, numbers do create a problem. And I mean the number of people available that keep getting sent. That's where the biggest issue was. I can see our conversation in Spreaker is really going into an interesting twist, but the war on Mars, yeah, there is absolutely one going on. It's one of a couple of spots that are being contested right now, and basically it seems that what they've done, the people that are actually spearheading the aggressive side of it, is gone, well, you said we couldn't take out Earth. But you didn't say we couldn't take out Mars. And if we can get a foothold on Mars, then we can work on convincing you to let us have Earth. Okay. Did I mention the fact that all off-worlders are not necessarily more socially evolved?
I get that, I mean, look at the way some of them look, my friend. They're not the most attractive group.
Yeah, you should see what they say about you guys.
Pure handsomeness on this end. Pure handsomeness. I want to get to a question from Claudia here. She is asking, do the off-worlders work a lot with crystals? It seems a lot of sightings around crystal caves. Are the crystals possibly an energy station?
Well, the answer is definitively yes, in some cases. And what I mean by that, crystals are absolutely, the off-worlders do use crystals, and so do the ancient races, by the way. Crystals are better at holding energy and holding data than any mechanical or magnetic device that mankind has developed, bar none. Now, they are better, and they are more secure and more resilient than anything else out there. And the reason I said in some cases, well, in most cases, is because there's a little known piece of added bonus. There are some caves here that are nesting grounds. There's a cute little planet in Earth, in our solar system, called Vulcan, that is just inside the sun's photosphere. The people there are crystalline. And much like the sea turtles of Earth, okay, they go back to the same place to nest. So if it sounds like I'm saying that the crystals in certain caves on this planet are live, I'm not kidding. I am. Okay. But the other thing is, the other thing that the crystals are very good at is the energy that they broadcast means when we're talking about line of sight communication, where mankind has to use satellites to get around the planet, we put satellites in orbit to be able to communicate around the world, the crystals send the energy directly through it. Net result, you have communication without line of sight. Okay, crystals can also be turned around and used for various things. You can build things like, for instance, a fusion reactor, or a surgical laser, or an operating theater using crystal refraction. Okay. That's the reality behind the crystals. They are extremely beneficial and very useful in more ways than you might think.
I'm not sure because I was trying to keep track of all the other questions. Did you get to the question from Claudia as well about are there crystal cities out in space? Did you get to that one?
No, but I think we were just touching down on that one.
Yeah, and to follow up, she says, seems when working with crystals while meditating, it can manifest your thoughts effortlessly. Do the off-worlders use some sort of crystals for the power of thought or for traveling faster than the speed of light with their ships throughout space?
Intriguingly enough, she's on the right track. The crystals themselves can generate a barrier breach. It doesn't. What it does is it shifts the ship out of phase so that the physical things that they're running towards they don't run in, making straight line travel instead of trying to calculate out gravitational pull. Some of the, depending on the race, they can actually use a crystal modulator to do what humans would call phase through a planet to get there. Okay, that's ultimately what it boils down to, which is why when you start taking a look at that kind of technology and you compare it to mankind's technology, where people have told me regularly, if there was an off-world attack, we'd repel them because we're human and we can do it. And that's a great concept, but completely offline.
Eric has a question. He is asking, what do the off-worlders use for long-range communications?
What are the off-world... Oh, what...
How does ET phone home, man? How does ET phone home is what it comes down to.
Ultimately, it depends on the race, but for the most part, many of them employ, quite frankly, psychic communicators. Okay, thought transfer. The crystals are a big universal unit. It's something that many different races use. They don't bother, when they talk about subspace communication, they literally have communication devices that utilize pinhole wormholes to transmit information through. And you've got the computer to translate it. On the other end, you've got the computer that can sort it out, that can translate it, re-put it back together for virtually instantaneous communication, very much like we are on right now, just over a lot further distance.
Let's go back to Claudia for a second. She is asking, do the off-worlders, Keith, use the power of thought to travel, and the ships are one with their thoughts?
The answer to that is, in a few select cases, the answer is yes. But that's not the norm. Okay, you're talking about a race that has gone so far beyond the human concept. When you get to a race that does that, they're not concerned with mankind and the, quite frankly, petty bickering that's going on here. Those races that have that level of intellectual advancement, yes, they will watch, and that is literally what they are, is they're watchers. They watch, they take notes, and they do absolutely nothing to interrupt it. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, they do absolutely nothing to stop it. Okay, so is it used? The answer is yes. Okay, they, thought is saying they do know how to connect mankind with or not mankind, they know how to connect their people as a unit to move it. Okay, one of the biggest problems that mankind is having trouble with, where it comes to the faster than light travel, is the fact they're trying to compensate for the ship moving faster than people will, the gravity flux. Okay, the races that have figured out how to use thought to make a cohesive attachment, okay, to have eliminated that barrier, which essentially locks it all together without solidifying it. Kind of like the human body is all one piece. It all follows its own path. The individual body, but the individual cells and the individual organs, which are all different parts of the same thing, do their own thing without interruption. Same idea with the plant, with the ship. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm learning much. Let's get to another question here, and this one from Joe. So, is our solar system our solar system? And if not, who owns it? Or are the extraterrestrials who are coming here, could they be called trespassers?
Well, ultimately, if you want to put ownership to it, I'm going to go out on a limb and go, and correct me just for simplicity's sake, Dave, would you agree that the people that built the planet would be the owners?
You and I have a totally different look out at that, man. I'm a creationist.
Yep.
So I would say, in my world, it would be God's planet.
Okay. Now, here's where it gets to be really, really screwy. Because in my world, it's the same thing. The only difference is I happen to know the connection between the two. And I do mean that quite literally. If you look at it from that, if you take it from who built the planet doesn't work, then you take the first denizens, the first peoples that lived here. And if we go with those people, if you will, the first colonists before any other sentient race got here, then frankly the Alpha have it. And that's an ancient race. Not the humans, not any of the different nationalities, not any of the off-worlders like the Greys or the Arcturians, none of them. The owners are the Alpha. And because if you go the route of who the first race was that was here. Okay. And, that's where you sort of have to, if you're going to ask that kind of a question, we sort of have to take a look at what the definition is of, like, how would you identify the actual owners? Mankind was certainly not the first race. Mankind is the dominant caretaker. But if mankind screws it up, then, quite frankly, another race will evolve to take slack. It's happened before, it'll happen again. I'd prefer it not to happen anytime soon, personally.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to sound like an idiot here for a second. I apparently have a new chat room that I didn't even know people were chatting on.
Okay.
And I literally just found it because as you were speaking, if you saw what I do here, I have 3 computer screens, I have 4 chat rooms that I follow, and then on my main screen where I run my Skype, I also have Twitter on there. Well, apparently there's a new chat in the SOR or hashtag SOR, and I've missed a bunch of questions for you. And I'm feeling kind of guilty here because I literally just recognized this.
Well, on the plus side, to all the people in that particular chat room, welcome aboard. And at least now that Dave knows you're there, you certainly won't be missed again.
No, exactly. You know, and it's funny because I really try to participate on Twitter. I'm not good at it. You know, I'm trying, but now that I know, I guess I got to follow this now. So I'm going to get to a couple questions from here. I think, and a couple goes by the name God of Thunder, and he's been in the Spreaker chat room as well. I think he made an amazing comment here saying, if E.T. walked down the street, most people wouldn't notice because they're too busy looking at their cell phones.
You know, ironically, he's right.
Oh, true enough. And the other question that I'm going to get to here is from God of Thunder as well. He says, why don't some of the advanced benevolent extraterrestrials help out mankind with health issues?
Well, how about if we start with, and I agree with the question, and they do, but here's the problem. The cure for cancer was turned over back in the 60s. You know, the off-worlders stepped in and said, look, this is a major problem for you guys. Overlooking something key here, because every person on the planet is born with cancer. And hear me out on that. Cancer is a cell structure designed to take out weak cells. It's a common root in all of the cancers. The off-worlders came in, and quite frankly, the Pleiadians came in and said, here's the solution. Mankind decided it was a better profit line not to turn it over. Okay, that would be just one example of a health issue. They tried showing mankind that the toxins that mankind is putting into the food is doing more damage to the children than any accident could. Okay, only mankind finds, on the whole, and I call it mankind because I'm not talking one nationality, I'm talking across the globe, seem to find it better to keep the people ill and confused and at war with each other because it's easier to make money and to get ahead in their eyes. They're wrong. It's actually counterproductive. But the off-worlders have tried turning over the information. Mm-hmm. Okay. Unfortunately, man on the whole has an extremely strong greed base to them, and that creates all kinds of complications.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to another question out there. And let's ask this one. Apparently, when we go back, because we're going to go backwards here for a couple of seconds, if you don't mind, when we were getting into the hybrid program and what you believe about hybrids, Dr. Jacobs accordingly believes that all the hybrid program is one malevolent venture into crossbreeding. I know you think it can be used for positivity as well, but Dr. Jacobs also does have a very big voice in this. Keith, would you agree or disagree that he is right?
Oh, that it is all one great big thing in crossbreeding? No. Is that a major factor in it, in the motivation of many of the peoples that are involved in it? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is another faction of the hybridization program. It's easier to infect and to debilitate a race or a group, an area, if you can build a walking biological bomb. There's all sorts of negative things that you can focus on. The reason I focus on the cultural evolution, the cultural hybridization side, the cultural translators, is not because the negative doesn't exist. It's because if I were to focus on all of the things that are going wrong, or that the negative side of what it could be used for, instead of the positive side of what it could be used for, you think this planet's covered in fear around the off-worlders now. Some of what can be done, I mean, you know, when you look at the hybridization program, yes, absolutely, there are some people out there that are literally doing it to see what they can do. Okay, they are literally trying to figure out what races can be crossbred with other races. Sad part about true scientists, they've got a curiosity streak that is envious. Okay, I mean, if you think about it, if mankind would put their curiosity streak to if any race were to put their curiosity streak to the positive side of things instead of the negative, things would go a lot smoother. But the reality is, in order to figure out how to build something, you've got to figure out how to destroy it first. You've got to pull it apart. And that's just a sad reality on a level.
I want to get to another question here because Mario brings up a good question. Guess what we forgot to do again?
Gee, I could give you a list, but what's
The photo. The photo.
He is right. And therefore, because quite frankly, I know where it is, don't get me wrong. Can I pop it up right this second? No, but...
Let's try during the break. Let's try during the break.
That ain't going to happen, because if it's where I think it is, I can't get to it. Right. However, I will tell you this, and Dave, since I'm telling you this on live, I want your help to make sure I do.
Sure.
Remind me to track the thing down. I know where it is, but the fact of the matter is that I've got to make sure that the only people that I'm showing, or not the only people I'm showing, but the only people in the photo, are quite frankly myself and the guy in question.
Yes. I can understand that.
So how about if we put it this way? The first one of 217, don't let me forget, and I will do my dangest not to, but my mind doesn't work as well as I'd like. Let's have it for that day.
All right, so all the listeners out there, what I want you to do for me is the next time Keith is on January 6th, I want you to bombard me on social media to get the photo from Keith of him and the Pleiadian blue alien. I want you to get that for me. I want you to hammer it on my social media that I need to get that photo out because we're getting it first. We are getting it first.
Yeah, because nobody else has it.
Exactly. So, my bad and Keith's bad.
Absolutely. And for that, I do apologize.
Well, I do want to. I want to say specifically here, as apparently I'm learning how to talk again, that I do know the photo exists. I have seen it. Okay, so there's no wool being pulled over anybody's eyes here. It was just honest lack of communication, and considering Keith and I talk maybe once, maybe twice a month, you have to forgive us because we're trying to catch up on a whole lot of other stuff, and the photograph just never seems to come up. So blame me as your host, your producer, and your ticket to the photo, but we will get it. Hit me up, like I said, hit me up next month on social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it may be, and I will get it for you.
Yeah, just on a personal note, to let people understand one little detail here. I got permission, yes, to show it, and I got it while I was out east at the beginning of September. What most people here don't realize is between that period when I came home I came home to find out that my father had gone from being rather up and about and mobile to rapidly dying. On top of that, and I'm not looking for sympathy for it, this is just simply where real life gets in the way of mental thinking. On top of that, my parents decided to tell me that although I'd been fighting with them since I was born, telling them that what was going on with me was real, they'd been telling me no, it wasn't. Both of them, only a month and a half ago now, confirmed that my memories are actually accurate, that they know they're accurate, and that they deliberately withheld corroboration of them. So this is not a question of going, oh, I said it exists and I'm not, I don't want to show it. It's a question of my life, sad to say, took one heck of a side turn without any warning. Needless to say, I haven't exactly been, shall we say, as focused as what I would like to be. And like I said, this isn't an excuse. This is just, if anybody's ever lost somebody close to them, it can throw you for one heck of a loop.
And on that note, we're going to start to wind things down as hour number 2 is pretty much out of the way. We got hour number 3 with Mr. R. Keith Andrews and your questions coming up right after this on the Mighty SOR. Stay tuned, people. It's going to be a wild ride right to the end. Have a good one. Enjoy your break. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news at spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin are in for Cosmic Passport at Spaced Out Weekend, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Highly suggest if you don't have any plans, or maybe you're hanging out with some friends and you want to crank it up, get into it. It'll be a couple of really good programs coming up this weekend. I'll be back on Monday with Peter Haviland as my guest, talking Texas ghosts. We want to thank everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 160 countries around the world. Good to have you along for the ride with us. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valuable listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and he's not even sharing his ice cream for us to enjoy, but we got a password. Deoxyribonucleic. Deoxyribonucleic is your password. What it means, I don't think even the best of us know, but Bill sets a password each and every night on this show. He tries to make me stumble like he did tonight. Thank you, Bill, for setting the password once again. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. Katrina is the latest SOR Space Traveler. We appreciate you doing that, Katrina. Thank you so much. Read up on Eric Markham's SOR Space Wire. Check out my latest blog, Rock Out with Bumblefoot. And if you've had a weird sighting, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We're waiting to investigate it for you. For the final time tonight, and the final time of 2016, we introduce our Keith Andrews. He comes on the first Friday of the month. The ET Connection is his show. And here we go, Keith. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me. And I guess I should say welcome back to you, too.
Absolutely. Your next program will be on January 6th, which, of course, will be the first Friday of January. And another regular of this program, Samantha Mowat, who is an ET contactee as well, and a British Columbian, I may add as well, has a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Now, what would you do if I said, no, I'm not taking any more?
Well, it would put me in a real pickle, shall we say. She is asking about your reptilian experiences, because she has actually started having a few of those recently. And how do you control them? How do you handle them?
Well, I'm in kind of a rare position on that one. I usually control them, or them, if you will, by actually directly talking to them to find out what they're up to. In very few of the reptilian interactions that I have now are of a negative sort, or even of a complicated one, if you will. However, dealing with them in the first place was problematic in the extreme with many of them. Where I lucked out, the first reptilians I dealt with were the Strazazians, the 7.5 to 8.5 foot reptilians, and it was them that actually so much for English. They were the ones that literally saved my life. So I've kind of got a better connection with them than many people. But usually it boils down to one thing. Depending on the specific race you're dealing with, where it comes to the ones that I deal with, the Strazazians, respect is the critical factor. Respect, honor, be true to your word. If you're going to tell them you're doing something, for pity's sakes, do it. Okay, that is the best way to deal with them. I mean, yes, they're intimidating. If you just look at the height, they're intimidating. Okay, when you're dealing with, when you deal with Teklex, which are your 4.5 to 5.5 foot raptor-looking ones, it really boils down to basically dealing with them the same way that you have to deal with a bully. Stand your ground, and they will back down. Okay, on the whole. When you're dealing with a pack, of course, standing your ground is usually not necessarily your wisest move. Drakes understand they're going to look down on you, both literally and metaphorically anyway. Don't take offense to it. Because if you take offense, they will see you as lesser than what they already see you. There are so many possibilities. The one thing I don't know, and this is where it gets to be a little problematic, is I don't know specifically which race she is starting to deal with. And that's where it gets to be complicated. That's where I can't give a definitive how to deal with them, because I can tell you the way that I've dealt with some of them. One of the biggest issues, and when you take a look at me, it does not add up, but so be it. But I put one of the Strazazians in the infirmary I happen to know the weak point. And it boiled down to an issue of I didn't have a choice. Well, I did, but it wasn't a good one. So it depends on what the situation is that's going on. But honor and respect, especially amongst the Rosasians, is the key. Okay, if you show an effort to communicate, they communicate. If you scream, they look at you as, quite frankly, beyond cognizant, beyond communication, and they will deal with it as best they can. But if they specifically actually go through extreme training so that they don't accidentally tear a limb off of somebody.
So,
does that make sense?
So in the fact that she is having reptilians giving her everything from benevolent, malevolent downloads to love bites to absolutely everything, trying to control her thoughts and everything, how do you build the strength up to deal with that? Because it has to be draining.
Oh, there is no question it's draining, and I will tell you, I do feel for her. But if it's all the same race, then what you're probably dealing with is Techlex. If she's dealing with all the same one, okay. The only other one, well, it's depending on the size. If it's the short ones that are doing that, it's likely Techlex. If it's your taller 7.5 foot, you're looking at Tormenon, and those people are just simply creeps. Simply put, they're mercenaries. They go to the highest bidder, and they've got the attitude to match it. But you are absolutely right, Dave. It is extremely draining trying to get a handle on things.
Samantha also wants to know about the healings that ETs can do, because we have heard so many times that a lot of extraterrestrial species have actually taken people up and healed broken bones, healed cancer, wounded knees, a lot of times. Now, they don't do it for everybody, which I don't want to get into a whole argument about this, but what about the ET healing process? How do they choose who to heal and who not?
Well, now that one I would love to be able to give you a definitive answer on as far as the how. Sometimes, you know, the best way I can put it is, and I don't know what their guidelines are, but if they feel that whoever they're dealing with either was wounded because of their action, okay, or if that person has been doing something or they feel because of their knowledge of timelines and where things are heading, if they feel that person will be better suited or in a better position to help them down the road, or if they feel that the person has done something in the past that warrants a compensation, if you will, that seems to be when they step in. Okay, specific parameters, I don't, in all fairness, I really don't know how they pick and choose. Before we go on, I'm just going to sidetrack here. Mario in Spreaker, I actually saw this question go through earlier. He asked if Pleiadians actually have the ability to change gender at will, and the answer is definitively no. It's just that simple. They're either male or female, depending on how they're born. But the issue of how they do the healing, how they choose the recipients, I can't begin to tell you how they actually do it. But those seem to be the most common denominator, if you will. Okay.
Right. Well, let's move on, and I'll wait for Samantha. If she has anything specific she wants to ask, she can send me a text message back, and I'll get them right to you. Bundy has a question, and he is asking, how many off-worlders are in positions of power in worldwide governments?
You know, I would be, shall we call it an educated guess, but if you've even got 1% of the place, I would be more inclined to say if you've got 0.5% of people in positions in the upper bay areas, they're doing well. The thing that has to be understood here is, yes, some off-worlders, some ancient races have gotten into positions of power, absolutely. But it is not a global network of off-worlders trying to do anything. It is done on an individual base, and it depends entirely on the specific individual what they're aiming at. But it is not orchestrated by, at least not to the best of my knowledge, any of especially not the consortium, because the consortium doesn't want control of the planet. From the consortium standpoint, and from the Pleiadians, and for that matter, the Watchers, the planet has to stay on its own path. It cannot be guided if it is going to take its rightful place. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to finish up on that one, or do you want me to go to the next question?
You can go to the next one.
Okay. Dennis is asking, have there ever been any humans recruited as warriors or scientists by extraterrestrials?
Absolutely. And as consultants, and in all fairness, even in some cases as medical professionals to deal with, quite frankly, the humans that are recruited for the other positions. It's not. There is an ongoing exchange. The question of, gee, that sounded more like Daffy there, like Porky Pig there. Terrible stutter. The reality of it is that there is ongoing exchanges. Off-worlders coming down to the planet and humans going off-world to sort things out. Okay. That's the issue that you have to look at. Is it's not just going one direction.
Let's move on here. Gail has a question. Do aliens, to your knowledge, book study before grabbing humans for research? If they studied ethics, anthropology, or even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they would have most of what they need.
Well, do they do the, as she calls it, book study? And that's a good way to put it. The answer is definitively yes. They are also, on the whole, trained to deal with humans from a practical standpoint, as in a few, bear in mind this has been going on for quite a while, so there's already a chunk up there. But before a collection group is sent down, they are trained to deal with humans, because the last thing they need is to bring up a bunch of dead humans. That's been done before. Didn't work well. So reading the books, yes, they read them. As far as they would have most of what they need, not even remotely close to what they need. But it does give them a background, the tip of the iceberg, if you will. But it doesn't give them close to the information that is necessary to accommodate what they're aiming for. Okay. It's not a question. They do study first. They have to. Because, frankly, if they don't study first, you can kill an awful lot of people by making a mistake in any number of fashions. It's not just the humans that they study, though. They also, for instance, have studied the way animals react around them to know what they're dealing with, because some animals will react very violently to an off-worlder showing up. Others react as though, who really cares? Okay. That's the biggest issue, is they definitely do their research first. Collecting somebody is the last well, the second last step of the research, of the communication lines. But we also have to understand, in many cases, with many people that have been taken, when they're returned, there is an exchange of information that is handed back down. The problem is that most people don't handle, they either, because of their own mental state, and this is not against them, but many people they will not let themselves balance the information out. So instead of remembering the whole message, they get part of the information, and the other part gets scrambled. And this is one of the reasons why the off-worlders are still doing what they're doing. What people don't realize is mankind evolves so fast, especially under trauma situations, that the information doesn't get laid out in the right way. Okay, like it's kind of like trying to put a whole pile of information into a filing cabinet and then throwing the filing cabinet into a mixmaster. Make sense?
Totally makes sense. Let's move on to the next question. John is asking, actually, pardon me, there is a follow-up from Gail on this. I apologize. We'll get to John's question right after. Problem with having two screens, one on my left and one on my right. I'm like going back and forth. I got that itchy eye thing going on. Anyways, Gail's next her next question is, what are they aiming for then? And, I want to add something to this. Are there actually, when you have been taken, have you actually read up on one of their books on humans?
Well, oddly enough, no. But then I haven't read up on any of the books on aliens either. However, I have discussed at length the various races, with the various races, their perspective and their understanding of humans. And it's kind of really, really, considering like the time that they've been doing this, it's amazing how many of them have a real screwy perspective of what drives humans. They've missed a lot of it, but on the whole, many of the races see humans as very, very misguided, very egocentric, very aggressive, and the basic perspective from their end is they're still trying to figure out how, with so many people with so many great ideas, why it is you've got the wingnuts actually running things. That's what they can't figure out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's move on here. We got a couple more questions coming through. This one comes from John. John is asking, when was your most recent face-to-face alien encounter, and what do they want from you, and what's in it for them?
Well, the most recent was about a week and a half ago. And the reality is, the reason for it, part of it was because, I was going through a rather rough time, and in this case, it was more a social call than anything else. That being said, and yes, we are talking about dealing with Srazazians. Okay, there are a few other races that are, because I don't just go where only they are, but they are the ones that I've developed a very solid connection with, if you will. But what they want with me on the whole is to understand how best to deal with some of the messes that they're dealing with. Because they keep looking at the planet, at the way people are interacting. And there is a huge debate going on as to, and it's complicated, but the backbone is they're trying to figure out how to stop mankind from getting off the planet before mankind evolves and develops the cognitive capacity to stay working with each other because in their eyes, basically you've got a bunch of individuals that do not coordinate. And the best way to put it is they're worried that that mankind will gain access to or develop of their own accord through means that they really don't get. The ability to get to places that they can cause irreparable damage to man, never mind anybody else. One of the biggest things that I have to explain to them is how mankind can do what it does, where it can jump from a logical problem, go to a completely illogical sequence, and still come out smelling like a rose. They don't get that, and they still don't understand why, with that capacity, mankind hasn't put two and two together. But that's one of the biggest things that I end up trying to help them sort out, is that because there's been a number of cases where it's like, well, we should go down and do this, and I'll look at them and go, you go after humans in that fashion and you will lose in spite of your superior firepower. Okay, but let us not be mistaken. If they wanted war, mankind hasn't got a prayer. But they don't want war, so you're in luck.
And I'm a firm believer of that, because I think they would have pretty much taken us over by now if they wanted. Let's get to Eric's question. Eric is asking, how do dolphins and other cetacean species react or communicate with the off-worlders?
Well, in the dolphin's case, it literally is sonic vibration. And most of the cetacean species do it exactly the same thing, modifying they modify their communicative levels based on atmospheric density. Okay, now bear in mind, that atmospheric density is underneath water. But they also calculate, dolphins are not, the crustaceans are not, are not stupid people. Okay, but they do it through basically sonic resonance.
So the dolphins are well aware that they are there.
Absolutely.
Let's get to another question here. And I think this is an actually good question, because there's a lot of people who want to know if there's a malevolent species out there. Do bullets, are bullets effective against any alien race?
Against most alien races. Most alien races, I mean, if you shoot a gray with an actual gray, not one in an armored tank, but you shoot the gray itself, just like a human, it'll die. If you shoot any of the humanoid, i.e. your Nordics, your Arcturons, right, your Mobians, a bullet will kill them. Absolutely. You know, death by natural causes. Naturally, if you shoot somebody in the heart, they're going to die. You know, the problem is when you get into some of the races, it's not the question of will the bullet hurt, it's a question of will it penetrate the hide. Because the ones that come from a higher density planet, you need a better bullet. The ones that come from a higher vibratory planet or higher vibratory race, a standard bullet won't do a thing because it'll pass right through them. Okay, I mean, so do bullets work? Certainly. But the flip side of that is if we take, you know, if you hit any one of the races with a medieval mace, a chunk of metal on the end of a stick, it will do damage. But bear in mind, some of these races that use maces use an awful lot bigger chunk of metal.
Or they just rub their tummy and fire lasers at you, much like what happened to Phil Schneider down at Dulce back in the 80s.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's just concentrated optic energy.
Either way, that's just some nasty, nasty crap right there, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's something I'm not dealing with. I just won't go there. You know, they start shooting lasers out of their tummy. I am just not going there.
Yeah, it really takes all the equality out of the fight.
It takes the fun out of it. Takes the fun out of playing. You know, I mean, just a little cops and robbers going on here. You know, nobody gets hurt till the aliens start shooting stuff out of their stomach. That's not cool. Let's get to another one. And I think this is another good question from Joe. He is saying, aliens have been studying and taking people for thousands of years. Are they just slow? What are they studying? What is their end game? Can't they get the information from the exchange program people?
Well, two factors. One, I question the issue of the speed of their thinking on occasion myself, to be honest with you there, Joe. But part of the problem is evolutionary speed. Yes, they've been doing it for thousands of years, but the speed that the triple helix changes is where the problem is. There is so much information, and it's not just the humans. What people don't realize is the communication array that runs between humankind and the rest of the planet, okay, is incredible. It's a neural net that is so much more complex than just the human genome. It's just they found that every time they take a tree off the planet, the tree dies. When they take a human off the planet, with the cognitive capacity being the dominant sentient race on the planet, they have more information and can get more information on the rest of the planet without having to take core samples or take major chunks of water to sort things out. They literally are using the neural net to track the information. And rest assured, it's not just this planet. The neural net extends into the outer reaches of our own solar system. Okay, so can they get the information by just the exchange program? Let's face it. The people that have the information, frankly, don't exactly cooperate that well with the idea of voluntarily going up and succumbing to examinations that they can't begin to understand. And the people that do volunteer, sad to say, most of them aren't interested in sharing information. They're interested in getting it from the off-worlders, which is quite, I mean, it's, and don't get me wrong, I agree, it would be nicer if it could be just a cooperative thing. Okay, and I'm just going to pop this little one in that Joe has just added there. Do aliens kidnap and study each other? The answer is definitively yes. And there is such a wonderful little thing called slave trading among some races. So, it's not just about, they don't just pick on the humans.
Mm-hmm. Watchdog has an interesting question, and it is, a lot of people out there believe that we are a product of extraterrestrials, maybe not a god per se. So if extraterrestrials did produce us humans, who produced them?
Very, very intelligent question. And the answer, sad to say, is far more complicated than you might. It depends. We have this problem of who exactly created man and therefore where they came from. In a nutshell, were humans built by a different race? The answer is yes. Oddly enough, it was actually done by genetic acceleration, which is why there is so much of a link to the chimpanzee. That's not an accident. That was the only way they could do it. But where they came from was the race that actually originally built mankind, actually put mankind together to start with. And you can call it God, or you can call it gods, or whatever name you'd like. They came from before the last cycle of what humans call the Big. Okay, this rendition of the universe is not a new thing. This is an ongoing cyclic evolution.
So let me follow that up then with a question of my own here. Are we then that far behind where they are? And the reason why I ask that is because Gail put a question in the SOR Space Travelers asking, has anyone just recommended Wikipedia to them? You know, because for a lot of us, Keith, we think we have advanced so far in the human race, the genetics of everything, the smarts, the technology that we have created to kind of make this a world where everything can be done on a notepad, on a computer, on a tablet. You know, we've done a really good job at trying to advance ourselves very quickly, especially over the last 15, 20 years. So the question that I have in regards to that, though, is are we that far behind them that we continue to put a human thought on trying to figure this out when they are saying you can't think like a human to get where we need to be?
Well, the Reader's Digest answer would be yes. Mankind is so far behind itself that it doesn't realize it. The thing that I keep running into, and I've mentioned this multiple times, give me a computer, I can get really confused really fast with the thing. Okay? Give me a biomagnetic holographic interface and I can make the thing sing and dance. But modern technology doesn't handle that. In the 70s, I was telling the doctors about the triple helix. Now, I was only like in my early teens. Okay, late childhood, early teens, when I was telling the doctors they needed to look at it. They didn't have the technology then to even find it. They didn't find the triple helix until the late 90s. So is mankind behind in its technological and genetic evolution? Way further than what it wants to admit. Don't get me wrong. Mankind has gone head and shoulders ahead of itself. It has evolved a staggering level. Mankind should be, it should be proud of what it's accomplished. People call Stephen Hawking one of the most brilliant men on the planet today. The guy is an unmitigated moron when you compare him to some of the races. Okay, and don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against him. As humans go, his mind works at a staggering level. But when you start comparing him to Pleiadians, he's a vegetable.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Eric has a question. Are we artificially accelerated now? Seems our technology has evolved so quickly.
Did you say, are we right now, they are not accelerating mankind, at least not to the best of my knowledge. Yes, technology has evolved at a staggering level, and that's one of the problems, because when you take a computer, and a computer can spit out information, mankind pumps information as accurate as it wants into the computer, and the computer gives an answer in a hurry. The problem is, the computer is not faster than the human brain, and mankind has chosen to listen to the computer instead of the brain. That is why mankind is causing itself problems.
So what about the speed of technology? How many of today's technologies are out there, Ron, that we have actually received from extraterrestrials?
Well, the concept of the neural net, which is how they ended up putting the computer together in the first place, was actually brought to them by an off-worlder. And it was done by explaining, or by, if you will, introducing them to the concept of cellular modification, of deliberate cellular modification to accommodate faster thinking. Okay, the computer, much as it's a brilliant machine, okay, it still does not work as fast as man's brain can. But the concept was handed to them, to mankind at that point.
Mm-hmm. So, in the end, when we look at things like fiber optics, cell phones, smart technology, satellite radio, are we looking at programs that have been started here, or are we looking at programs that have been started elsewhere?
Oddly enough, a lot of that was started here, and we can actually pin down a lot of that technology to one man that most people actually totally ignore.
Tesla?
Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, okay.
Tesla was a brilliant man, don't get me wrong. And where it came to energy conservation and energy evolution and what have you, Tesla had it down to a fine art. But many of the technologies that modern society is using, are absolutely brought about by man, and by a simple little thing that this is what the off-worlders weren't banking on. Mankind took this neat little concept of what he was shown, and instead of going, how can we get this to work more efficiently, how can we understand it, they turned around and went, we want to get to the end. So if we pump this information into this machine, we can get the answer. What they didn't take, what mankind didn't have the ability to do, was look at the ramifications generations down the road about what would happen if they made a miscalculation. In simplest terms, considering the show we're on, the type of people that are listening, if you're trying to hit the moon, from Earth with a bullet, if you miss your angle by 1%, by 1 degree, you're going to miss the moon. Mm-hmm. You can have all the right information, you can have all the right concepts in place, but if you make a 1 degree miscalculation, you're going to miss your target. And that's what mankind overlooked. But the real the critical factor from your from people's standpoint is, was this is a lot of the technology mankind doing it? 90% of the medical technology has been done, sad to say, by trial and error, or maybe that's a good thing, by man itself. Most of the information, because like I said, they tried to give, the cure for cancer is already here. Man want to let it go, like the people in power, as it were, because there's too much money involved in it. And the sad part is, a healthy society will actually generate a better income for the people trying to make money, and will generate a better society for the people that want peace. This is where the big problem comes in, is that mankind has to get it through their head. When you're in kindergarten, I don't know with everybody's class, but when I was in kindergarten, we did this funny thing called the telephone game. The teacher told the first person in line a short sentence, and then that was passed on to the next person in line all the way down. Well, by the time it came out the back end, the sentence sounded nothing like the original. Mankind is still doing that backwards method when looking at what it's trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. So what technology, Keith, Give me one example that you have heard that they have given us.
Well, they actually have what the heck is it? Subspace communication was actually handed over by the Offworlders to mankind. Subspace being a communication line that makes talking to people, especially around this solar system, child's play, and it doesn't require line of sight. It requires line. Okay, it passes between it passes between the molecules, if you will, of solid objects to get there. You don't have to bounce it off a satellite.
What about nanotechnology?
Nanotechnology, they were showing how it works, but it was actually a human that figured out how to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were showing how it works, but because of the speed where the Offworlders ran into a problem that mankind solved, was the speed of man's ability to tap into bioenergy, especially in cases of extreme stress, impossible for the Offworlders to figure out how to make it work against humans, or more to the point, on humans. But the explanation was handed to human scientists who figured it out.
What about stealth technology?
Stealth technology wasn't exactly given to them. They took it. They were working on it to start with, but I'll tell you, you drop a couple of starships of shuttles in that have technology, and reverse engineering works like a charm.
What about the MRI machine?
The MRI was actually developed on Earth, but it was developed on Earth way before the modern bout of off-world interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, quite frankly, the Egyptians were further advanced than what people believe. By the way, so were the Greeks.
And I think we can all literally agree with that. I think that's a very, very common aspect of what we can agree with in regards to anything that's done. You look at how the pyramids were built, whether in Egypt, whether in Mexico or the Mayan Riviera, the Mayans. Okay, we look at that. But the most recent example that I have a real affinity for is the Coral Castle in Florida. This is something that this gentleman who seemed to figure out, this meek old gentleman, had moved 2-3 ton pieces by himself.
Yep.
Right?
That is one of mankind's abilities that the Offworlders don't have and don't understand. And here's the other aspect of it. Claudia in SOR is asking, when humans do things using a collective consciousness in groups, prayer, meditative circles, that sort of thing, do the Offworlders feel it? And does it draw them closer? Well, the answer to both of those is yes. Although they're very wary of it as well. It's actually given the volatility of human temperament.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to another question here from Eric, as we want to shove as many of these questions at you as possible. What do we do in cases where the Offworlders are so alien that we have no common frame of reference?
And that is actually one of the biggest issues that we run into. And, I kind of overlooked it, but that is one of what has to happen, is when there is that much disparity, you end up with a group effort. Because what ends up happening is you take two races that are that separated, but that they are trying to make a connection. What you end up with is, if you leave them on their own, eventually they'll figure it out, but you're going to end up with a lot of problems. So they bring in people that have closer connection on both ends, so that they can work through a chain translation, if you will. Okay. You know, like, for instance, without going into a great chain, take a person that has one person that speaks French and another person that speaks Yiddish. Okay, but they don't speak the other language. So you take a guy that speaks English and one that speaks English and French and one that speaks Russian and Yiddish, and then you find one that speaks Russian and English. Okay, so that through a lot of work, you can find a way of making that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not just a plug it into a computer and out comes the information. It does not work that fast.
Michael has an interesting question in the SOR Space Travelers. He is asking, why am I an apparent UFO magnet? And I recall having this same conversation with you about 18, 20 months ago.
Yep, I recall that too. You were really, I don't want to say upset, but really confused by it.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't upset. Confused, yes. But I think that's a legitimate question that a lot of people have, that every time they go outside, Keith, they're seeing something up in the sky.
Yeah. You know, the best way I can put it, and I really, for obvious reasons, at least I hope they're obvious, I can't give a definitive, but it has to have, he's got to have something going on either with his interest that he has shown, and this might be an interest that he has shown on his own, like just invest of his own accord without involving a bunch of other people. He doesn't even have to announce it to anybody. Okay, it could have to do with a genetic marker that a specific group has been tracking. And more often than not, if he looks into his own past, his own bloodline past, there is likely an ongoing common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the most likely sides of it.
Mm-hmm. John is asking, how can we communicate with an alien who looks like an octopus?
Well, that's done in a couple of fashions. There is technology that they use kind of along the same lines as the TTY program that people use to talk to deaf people. Okay. Part of it is an optical, what's the word I'm looking for? Optical referencing machine, because depending on the race, but the octopeds that I've run into, they actually will change color in specific patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got the right equipment to translate it until such time as you've learned it, it's kind of like using it's using a computer to understand what the language means based on the modified color schemes. So Zosians have the same thing around their neck. Okay, the optical side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you certainly don't go into semaphore with them because, let's face it, arms.
Mm-hmm. I think Bill has an interesting question. It goes kind of against Michael's question. And Bill is asking, why can't I be a UFO magnet?
Well, oddly enough, that sort of falls into the same category. Because it depends on when you're focusing on, I want to have an experience, I want to see these things. The first question, and most people realize that it's being asked by themselves, but the first thing that the off-worlders are tracking is, why do you want the information? Why do you want that experience? Because what they found, unfortunately, is that humans are so greed-based on the whole. So don't anybody individually take offense unless you're greed-based, and then, well, go ahead. But they have to look at it from that way, because to the people that want to just have an experience, have a hidden agenda of their own that they want it for. And in all fairness, many of them don't realize they've got that hidden agenda, and that's why it doesn't just automatically happen.
I understand that, but are some people just naturally blocked?
Yes, absolutely.
So it doesn't matter if they want to be able to see it.
It's like if you wanted to be an astronaut, okay, but your equilibrium won't handle the centrifuge. Okay, if you can't handle going around in circles and then at different angles, if your body isn't built for it, you can want to be an astronaut all you want. It ain't gonna matter.
But either way, though, is it maybe for somebody like Bill not knowing what to look for? Because in his mind, he's never seen one.
Absolutely. And that is, I mean, one of the biggest issues when you're looking at the night sky, most people look for a light. Sometimes you're not looking for a light. You're looking for a lack of it. Sometimes the UFO shows up because it blocks something that should be there. But it's only blocked for a moment. Sometimes you'll look at it at, for instance, a tree, and the color is just a fraction off for a moment. You know, these are things that people don't realize. It's not always what you see so much as what you don't see that will identify what's there.
So how do you identify if you're in a position like Bill? Because he wants it so bad, and yet it just seems so out of reach for someone like him.
Well, the first thing I would suggest, Bill, is, and this is going to sound a whole lot easier than just doing it, but first rule of thumb, you do need to relax. Certainly look, but like I just mentioned, look for what's not there. Look for a change while you're watching the sky. Instead of just looking at the lights that are going, look for the ones that disappear. Okay, look for that thing that you're thinking caught your attention and you can't find. You know, I thought I saw something. The odds are, when you have that feeling, the odds are very good that you did see something. You'll also find it easier to spot them on a full moon than on a new moon, simply because it's later. But that being said, they're more active on new moons more often than not because they're harder to see.
Interesting. All follows the star patterns. Keith, we got about a minute left with you, my friend. Tell us what you're up to for the remainder of 2016.
Putting my head on straight, obviously I'm going to have to track down that picture, make sure that it's ready to go for the beginning year. I am working on a number of books that I've got and that I'm pushing to get finished, because frankly my one goal is to get done with my actual job so that I can actually get on and make money. Quite frankly, I'm tired of being poor. And biggest thing that I'm setting in motion is getting the groundwork done so that I can start for an actual peace conference up here in Kelowna, BC, or at least in the Valley, for 2018, and that's going to take a lot of work.
I may have an answer to that. We will talk at a later date here coming up.
Absolutely.
But I may have something there for you. And we will get through to that. My friend, you hold on, because I got to wrap this thing up. If you're listening on the Space Out Radio side, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot's not only a huge fan of this show, he is also our resident guitar god. He brings us in and takes us out of every Spaced Out Radio episode. Go to our website to rock with the guitar god when you have an opportunity to do so. If you want to follow this show, any of our archives, go to YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, tune us in on TuneIn, and download this show and others on iTunes as well. Also, tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be in the hot seat, along with Elizabeth Anglin. Spaced Out Weekend, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. They kick things off. That's why we bring you 7-day-a-week programming. I will talk to you next on Monday. My guest will be Peter Haviland. We're talking Ghosts of Texas. It's going to be an incredible show. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you all taking the time. It's been a great week. We wrapped it up well. Let's do it again on Monday. If you're in, I'm in. I'm good with that. Let's do this together. Let's build it. Do me a favor. Everybody tell a friend. Dennis Koch, thank you for finally joining in the chat room. I've been wondering when that's going to happen. I appreciate that. Everyone, have a good one. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Good night.